Hi, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast. On every week on Mondays, I am joined by Mr. Doug Upstone of DocSports.com. Great handicapper, one of the world's best, as a matter of fact, on a nice roll in football this year. How was your weekend, Doug? I mean, did the week continue the way you wanted it to in football?
It did not. I had a winning day on Saturday overall, thanks to Mississippi State covering. So that was good. Sunday, I was like many of the favorites. I was a casualty on Sunday, so it didn't go the way that I wanted, expected. But the first person as it was going along, the day, and you could see it, starting right away. I thought of you because you have been preaching that, these favorites can't keep winning. And guess what? All at once they didn't.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they got smashed. I had a couple of them. In particular, I had Cincinnati and the Raiders. The Raiders was there to do it, didn't happen. Cincinnati just was awful. Had their chances early, but didn't get it done. So you know what? As we talk about many times, you dust yourself off. You get up, you do it again. I missed both free plays too, by the way, which I wasn't happy about. So time to get it going again. Turn it back around.
That's the way to look at it. The one thing about me and Doug and several other good handicappers across the country is we have to wake up and go to work the next morning. We don't hide from the general public. Here we are on video. So obviously that statement's true. Having said that, I went 5-1 over the weekend in college football. NFL, not so good yesterday, 2-3. I did hit my Thursday night selection on Indianapolis. So 3-3 going into the Monday night game, 5-1 in college football, which I was quite pleased with, Doug. I also had, actually, I did not have Mississippi State. That was my only loser, you son of a gun, Arkansas. Okay. So in any event, it was a good week, and you could find me at rbwins.com. You could find Doug at docsports.com. And folks, also, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to our sports betting YouTube channel as of yet, please take a second to do so. It costs you absolutely nothing. And you hit that notification bell, and you get notified right away upon us publishing any sports betting videos on this channel. Also, don't forget to give the guys a like, meaning me and Doug today, me and Chip later in the week, me and Doug later in the week. Doesn't take us much to get happy. We're trying to make you happy. So please accommodate us as a small token of your appreciation. And Doug, what did you see in college football last week from a betting perspective, or what would you like to discuss in that regard?
Well, here's something for you, Ross. Throw this at you, see what you think on this one. Enough different people probably are familiar with the name, especially of poker players that are watching this video. The name Chris Moneymaker, who out of nowhere won the 2003 the World Series of Poker, and that was just a huge upset for him to win. And there's one guy I follow on ESPN, gambling writer David Perdome, regularly. And so they did a little bit of an interview and asked him a few questions. And one of the questions he asked, asked him if he gambled, and the answer was yes. And he said primarily college football. And so Perdome said, do you find that it's harder today than it was than yesteryear, okay, for sports betting? When yesteryear, probably going back 10 to 15 years, somewhere's in that neighborhood. And do you find it, more difficult to beat the odds makers or not? So that's the question I'm throwing to you, Ross.
That's a loaded question. And my comparison to, what is his name? Mike the Moneymaker?
No, Chris
the Moneymaker. Okay. Well, Ross the Moneymaker, one thing that I do have in common with him is I won the 2003 Playbook football contest, which was, I won all three categories, and things just catapulted from there. However, I don't play poker, so I can't compare myself to him, but I do have partaken in sports betting for the last 20 years now, and on a full-time basis, that is, folks. And the answer to your question is, I would think it is. I've just had several discussions with you and several discussions with Chip in this regard. Not to say that I'm a worse handicapper than I was 15 years ago, but there's a lot more to account for. For example, on totals in college football, you're seeing a lot of totals that are enormous because everybody and their mother has seemed to go to the spread offense, no huddle, quick tempo. So that part of it from a total perspective certainly is applicable to what he just said. Now in the NFL to me is in, if you talk to anybody in our profession, Doug, and I'd be curious to hearing your thoughts on this. We know the NFL is very challenging, and it's quite simple, folks. Okay. There's more parity in the NFL there is in college football. Obviously, why? You're talking about 32 teams in the NFL. You're talking over 150 in college football Division I. So in terms of what should be easier to win at, you would think the college football would be, just because there's more games to choose from. And anytime you give any handicapper who's worth their weight in gold, like we are, I'd like to think so anyway, then I would say that we are at an advantageous position when you give us 50 something games on a Saturday, and I'm being hypothetical here, somewhere in that area. As opposed to right now where 4 teams are getting a bye in the NFL every week, right? So now that's another factor in the NFL. You know, you've taken away from, what is it, Doug, from week 5 to about the second last week of the year, 4 teams get a bye every week. So somewhere in that area, folks. My point being is during that period of time, now we have 2 less games to choose from every week in the NFL. And if you really narrow it down to the main day, which is Saturday, you take away the Thursday and you take away the Monday games. And now what are we looking at? We're looking at 12 games on a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, if my math has served me well. So, yeah, I mean, the NFL was tough to begin with. And I think you could go back to when they started the buys, where you'll see a direct correlation on some of the top handicappers' win percentage in the NBA, a little bit lower on an annual basis every year. In other words, if guys were number 1 in the NFL at 61% back in 1995, it's more like 59% in the current age on average. Anyway, Doug, I hope it was a loaded question and I gave you a loaded answer. So any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'll say what Moneymaker said, and his said he definitely thinks it's harder, and his reason though is a little bit different. He said back in the early 2000s and even 2005s, for a lot of business, I mean, it was starting to change, but a lot of business was still bookie driven. And so with that being the case, a lot of bookies, just went with whatever, and essentially it was the USA Today, the newspaper, and that's what the lines, and of course the lines didn't change, in a newspaper. So that's what bookies went with, and that's how it was. He says these lines change instantaneously, and there was also far greater opportunity to beat books, and for example, if you were in Vegas, to where every place was independent how they set their odds and back in those days. And so you could go from one place to the next, and you could really shop and find, better odds. Now you can still do that today, but the differences are pretty minute. Okay. And they quickly, because so many of them are connected in syndicates in terms of how they release the lines. So I think that's the biggest thing. As far as myself personally, Ross, I don't think it's dramatically different. I think it is, especially college football. I think, pretty much the fundamentals of how it is the same. The biggest thing that I have seen, and stuff, just the stuff I tracked, was you used to be able to tell sharp money pretty easily. Okay. And you could really tell it like midweek when lines would move. And so you had an indication. That doesn't mean it was always right. It just means that you could have an indication. So it was something else to look at. Yeah. Today, because these syndicates will bet early, sometimes you get better lines later. And then there's been, just this, I've mentioned this before, there's just been so many people that are that are bettors that like to pretend, or at least think that they're sharps. So they'll follow these line moves, and it distorts the market in terms of the actual line. And so to get good numbers, it just, a lot of times it's not easy to get good numbers. And if you get one, a lot of times it'll be changing as you get closer to the weekend. So I think that's the biggest difference myself.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these number of bets, volume of bets, I should say, versus the percentage of money on those bets. And a lot of people look at that, including myself. I look for any kind of indicator I could have as an edge, and that's one of them. But you're right, Doug. It's become a little more blurrier in that regard, and you really have to become efficient at identifying what a reverse line move may be in terms of, is that sharp money, or is, you want to look for injuries when that happens. So it's not as well or clearly defined as it used to be. So, and the books are onto this, okay? Because I'll tell you right now, you can go to several different sites and see a huge disparity on what they're reporting as volume of bets versus percentage of money compared to the other two sometime, or one is drastically different. So now who do you trust at that point? And that's the other thing. You have to find somewhere, and you got to do some comparisons and say, who is on with this? XX site was, and I don't want to make this dirty. XX site is just just an example. Yes. So you want to look and you want to do a study and say, okay, who is more accurate on reverse alignment or going against public money, and go from there. And that's what I had to do. I feel like I have a reliable source, but even then, you overthink some things sometime when you do that. So in any event, Doug, we do have college football free picks coming for you right now on Saturday. And boy, oh boy, again, these lines right off the bat, when I look at them, some jump right out at me, Doug. Any jump right out at you, obviously.
Well, I will have a free pick with the strangest one, and I'll be honest with you, I did not dig to find out if there's some other information that I'm missing here. I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how Cal, who just lost to Arizona and has suffered a number of injuries, is only a 1.5 point underdog to USC. Now, maybe USC had a problem that I'm unaware of. I'm not going to deny that as I say this, doing this video. So I could be 100% wrong in terms of missing information. But the fact of the matter is that one really caught my eye.
Yeah. Well, you know what? USC, you said they may have problems you're not aware of. They've had problems, and I'm being facetious here. They've had problems. Look, when you fire a head coach after a 1-1 start to the season, at least they waited till you got off the tarmac. They didn't do what they did to Sarkisian. Right. There's got to be a problem. So, yeah, it is a strange line, Doug. There's no two ways about it. USC was a highly regarded team coming into the year. And obviously, the Trojans have been one of the most underachieving teams of the year. And Cal seemed to have some momentum going, and then they go lay an egg as a double-digit favorite last week. So what's your free pick for us this week, Doug?
Well, right now I'm going to go to the American Conference, which will be completely different in a couple of years, by the way, with a number of changes. And I'm looking at SMU and Central Florida. Now, after losing on a 100-yard kickoff return with 17 seconds to go in the game, SMU committed the cardinal sin of undefeated teams late in the season, which is to allow one loss to turn into two. And in fact, when I thought of this game, I thought of you, Ross, because I know with your database, you have information that you can put together on teams after they start the season 5-0 or go deeper into the season undefeated, where they, not consistently, but are pretty good play against options, and in the next game. And that's what it turned out for SMU. They come back, they lose to Memphis, 28-25 as a 3-point favorite on the road. Now, the Mustangs' weak spot, well, it's certainly, it's come to fruition. They've given up 400 yards passing in each of the last two games, both defeats. I don't think that's going to be, though, an issue against Central Florida, and here's why. Since quarterback Dylan Gabriel broke his collarbone, the Knights have averaged only 175 yards passing per game in their next 6 contests. That matters. If you discount the 49 points they scored against Temple, who, oh, by the way, has completely given up on 2021, they have averaged just 21.8 points per game in their other contests since Gabriel was sidelined. The Ponies come into this one, Ross, 11-3 at home since 2019, and they're on a 4-0 straight up and against the spread at home this year, winning by 30 points per game. Even though the spread's at 7.5, I'm not worried about it in the least, Ross, because I believe the number will rise on SMU as we get closer to the weekend. And I think the Ponies run wild and take this one by at least 2 touchdowns.
So you're on SMU over Central Florida. And what's the line you have right now, folks? Or Doug?
7.5.
7.5. So, folks, you want to buy that down to 7. And we've discussed this on several occasions. I can't stand losing by a half a point on a key number, which is 3, 6, 7, 10, 13, 14. I think Doug will agree with me there. The current line is 7.5. If you get 7.5, buy it down to 7. The juice only counts when you lose. It's not a sign of weakness. It's smart sports betting. You're okay with that, right, Doug?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to take a look at the Syracuse Orange going on the road to take on the Louisville Cardinal. That game will go at 12 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Right now, as we speak, and again, folks, we're recording on Monday, November the 8th. So keep that in mind, folks, because you may be viewing this video later in the week, and these lines we gave you today are subject to change. But in any event, right now it's Louisville -3, and the Cardinals, I should say, come in having lost their last 2 against Clemson and North Carolina State. They now find themselves with a 4-5 record on the year. On the other hand, Syracuse comes in with a ton of momentum, coming off back-to-back wins at Virginia Tech and a convincing home win against Boston College. They have one of the top 2 running backs in the country in Sean Tucker. Their offensive identity has been well-defined since Garrett Schrader has taken over at quarterback. The second coming of Eric Dungy, in my opinion. The kid's only a sophomore. And don't forget, folks, this guy was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, went to Mississippi State. Mike Leach took over a year later and wanted to make him a tight end. He said, no, thank you. Put the transfer papers in. Pretty good move as we speak right now, because this is a guy who did not start until week 4 of the season, or game 4 of the season. And since, over that time, 650 yards rushing and 13 touchdowns via the run. Also has thrown 7 touchdown passes and also thrown for over 1,000 yards. So multi-dimensional quarterback, no mistake, and a big quarterback, 6'5", 230. He runs the ball a lot. He's able to take the physical wear and tear on running the ball much more than a lot of other quarterbacks because of his size. And also Sean Tucker, just a dynamic running back, sophomore running back for Syracuse. Look for him to be sporting that number 44 jersey at Syracuse next year, which they don't allow anybody to wear unless they think he's top shelf. And just a reminder, Jim Brown, Floyd Little, they all wore that 44 at Syracuse. The Orange too, Doug. I mean, I was surprised when I saw this, but they're the number 3 rushing team in the country.
Yep.
And, they have gone to a run-dominated offense, but boy, they're doing it well, close to 250 yards per game. And what gets lost in the shuffle is the Orange defense and the improvement they've shown there. They are currently number 6 in the country in total defense at 318.8 yards per game. One last thing, Syracuse is now 5-4. They're 1 win away from bowl eligibility. That's something nobody thought would occur when the season started. They're coming off a 1-10 campaign last year, 5-7 2 years ago. So there's a lot of incentive there, if you will. And I think that Syracuse will step up to the plate. And, and they're 2-3 in the Big East or in the ACC, Doug. But, the 3 losses they had in conference were all by exactly 3 points and all on the final play of the game. This is a team with a little bit of luck that we could have been talking about playing in the Orange Bowl at the season's end. But you know what? It is what it is. And I'm going to take the Syracuse Orange plus the 3 over the Louisville Cardinal. And Doug Upstone, tell the folks again.
Yes, I got SMU. I'd say I'm comfortable with 7.5, but I would also recommend what Ross said at -7. So I think that's a good thing also. So yeah, so here we go. Time to get a couple of winners on a Monday and cash them on Saturday.
Well, Doug, fill the folks in on how you're doing in all sports for that matter, or anything you prefer to talk about, where they could find you exactly at Doc Sports, and what you may have coming up this week.
Sure, Ross. As you said, Doc Sports, that's Doug Upstone at Doc Sports. And of course, we'll have football as we get closer to start going through the games with more detail. Still 21-13 in the NFL. So that's been good. Say coming off a winning Saturday overall. So that was also good. And here we go. Depending when you see this video, Tuesday starts college basketball.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen all the lines yet, but oh my goodness, the number of games, holy cow, on Tuesday. I mean, that's going to be nuts. And of course, won't be long on Saturdays. Or I should say on Friday nights, where Ross and I will have multiple hours of things to look over as far as numbers on Friday nights. And then pretty much, especially then later on, we get into especially the Wednesdays and Thursdays for a lot of games. So yeah, so here we go. Along with everything else, I'm excited to continue this and get back to some college basketball. And if I had to say one tip that I would give to anybody on college basketball right now, if you think taking top 25 teams is a good idea, it's a bad idea. And why is it bad? Because of transfer portals, because of everything pretty much on the top 25, with rare exception, is on the come. In other words, the teams are built on reputation and potential talent, not on actual talent at the moment. So be careful when you're looking to back any top 25 team right now, because you don't know what you're going to get, at least for a few weeks.
And if you don't believe that, all you got to do is look at the college football preseason poll, in which North Carolina was ranked number 10. And I also believe USC was in the top 10 as well. If not, they were right around there. And how'd they do this year so far? Anyway, coming off that 5-1 weekend in college football, you could find my plays at rbwins.com, and also the NBA on a 7-4 run in the NBA. It's still early yet. I'm really picking my spots when I make plays. I know Doug agrees with that handicapping theory. And yes, I would agree with Doug as far as college basketball. I'm awful excited. I can't wait for us to start doing some college basketball shows. And that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks, folks. We just need to have a little more data we have access to, so we could talk about this as intelligently as possible, and also give you the best proper advice that you deserve. In any event, college basketball, big schedule on Tuesday. I'll have at least one game. Folks, if I can give you any advice on college basketball, right in line with Doug just said, is if you see a line based on past reputation that doesn't make sense, it probably is a good idea to go the other way. Okay. So meaning if, for example, if you saw Wisconsin at -4, against St. Peter's. I'm being hypothetical here, folks. Before you start to think what a steal that is, because you're so familiar with Wisconsin and the success they've had, think again. Usually you want to go the other way in those types of situations, or at least your antennas should go up and you shouldn't get suckered in. So in any event, keep that in mind. 2 handicapping tips from us in college basketball. Until the next time, which will be Thursday, we'll be discussing the NFL. For Doug Upstone of DocSports.com, I'm Ross Benjamin of RBWins.com. Like to wish each and every one of you all the very best. Don't forget to give us a like, folks. God bless and take care.